Good morning, guys. Another Sunday morning. Before I pick up the conversation from last time, from our conversation last time, and continue telling you about my experience with depression, I wanted to give a shout out to Naomi Osaka, who is for those of you who, I don't know, live in a cave, who doesn't know, she's a Japanese Haitian tennis player, and for standing up for herself at her last tennis open and letting the coalition, the people who run those sort of things, know that what she was not comfortable with and what she would not be doing in an effort to protect her mental health. She was letting them know what she needed to protect her mental health. Shout out to her for prioritizing herself, for prioritizing her health, her mental well-being. Applause to her for that. I also wanted to touch upon this documentary, if any of you have seen it or haven't seen it, called The Me You Can See. I believe it's Prince Harry and Oprah Winfrey. That was also a very good one. A very, very good one. If any one of you get a chance to see it, it touches upon mental illness. Well, it's about mental illness and people finding their voices and letting everyone know what it is to them, what it looks like to them, and that it's not just them. Millions of people around the world suffer from mental illness, especially depression. Depression runs rampant. So many more people suffer from depression than you can imagine. The episode with Lady Gaga was particularly gut-wrenching and tragic, but eye-opening definitely. So if you guys get a chance to see it, please do. It's eye-opening. Like I wanted to continue the conversation. Definitely, I wanted to continue the conversation. Looking at the television and reading the newspapers and looking at social media, I thank God that mental illness, mental health issues are finally in the forefront. It's finally in the forefront because so many of us have suffered silently. It's insidious that way. It's insidious that way because it makes you feel crazy. It makes you feel crazy, and you don't want people to know you're crazy. Because outwardly, you look fine. So you don't have anything to show that, no, I'm not fine, I'm suffering. I'm not fine, I'm suffering. But mental illness, depression especially, is insidious that way. It's something that's suffered in silence because it's not something you can really express to anyone's satisfaction or that shows in any real way. And it's something that whispers to you in the dark. It whispers to you in the dark that you need to keep silent. You need to keep silent. If you tell anyone, they won't believe you. They won't believe you. Because mental illness is, quote unquote, people acting crazy. People doing crazy things. So they're not gonna believe you. They're gonna think you're exaggerating. Especially if on the outside, the parts of your life that are working kind of denies what you're trying to say or how you're feeling. Most of the time, how they call some people functional alcoholics, where they can drink themselves under the table and the next morning just wake up like nothing happened the night before and get to work and do what they need to do, get the kids to school, go on with their day, go on with their lives like they weren't drunk under the table the night before. Those are functional alcoholics. So those people can go for years and decades, and nobody knew that, what they were doing, that they were alcoholics. Well, I like to believe that there's a version of the functional depressive, the depressed person who can go on with their lives, do what they need to be doing, and outwardly look like, quote, unquote, they're leading happy lives, but inside, where no one can see, they're dying inside. We're dying inside. We are dying inside. Our spirits, our souls are just slowly shivering, shrinking, and just dying piece by piece. And you don't know how to stop it. You don't know how to put it together. People look at you and they think you've got it all together and your life is great. You're doing great things. You're succeeding in your career. You got a wonderful marriage. Great kids. But you're dying inside. You're dying inside. And let me tell you, there is nobody who will give you a better happy face than someone who is depressed. We learn early on not to burden people with this, because we don't quite understand it ourselves. We're dealing with it ourselves, and that dark voice that whispers to you, don't burden people with this. This is your problem. This is your problem, and it's in your mind. It doesn't really exist. This is you slowly going down into madness. So don't burden people with it. They might think you need to be put away somewhere because you're crazy. They don't see it. That's the thing with depression, with any kind of emotional illness. There are no outward signs. Not really. I imagine if you get to a point where you're on the edge, then somebody might look and say, yeah, there's something here. There's something wrong here. Maybe that an attentive parent who's got the hawk eyes and just make sure that they're looking out for things might say, okay, my kid's behavior is different. My kid's attitude is different. But I've found that more often than not, parents tend to attribute that to other things than depression or any kind of mental illness, because that makes them uncomfortable to look for that. I mean, it's 2021. It might be different now. Parents might be a little bit more, what's the word, learned about these things now. But back in the day, no, those kind of changes they would attribute to normal growing pains, issues with friends, or start thinking, oh, they might be taking drugs, that sort of thing. But yeah, it's not like a physical illness where you can look at a person and be like, oh, you had a broken arm, you had a surgery here, or you had a cut there, or something that you can see that lets people know that there's something wrong or something had been wrong at some time, but it's fixed now. So people are okay with that. They're comfortable with that. They'll feel bad. Oh, you injured yourself. You had a car accident, had a surgery, but it's good that you're getting better now, and life goes on. So that they can handle. They can handle that. But telling somebody, I'm not happy. I'm not happy. I'm sad. I haven't been happy in a long, long time. Kind of, for a second of suspended time, they look at you where time is suspended for a second, like, oh, like they're thinking, what do I say to this? How do I respond to this? Like, okay. It just, the uncomfortability of it and the look of, I don't understand what you mean. How could you not be happy? I mean, you're smiling all the time. We socialize, we go out, you're laughing, you're smiling. You might even be dancing. Your life is great. Your life is great. You got great, good things going on in your life. I don't understand. How could you not be happy? And there will be people who will outright say to you, how could you not be happy? You got X, Y, and Z going on. People don't understand that things don't make you happy. Having things, accomplishing things, don't make you happy. You can have all the things in the world. You can have the best marriage, the most wonderful kids, the most successful career and fame, and just all the wealth you could possibly need in one lifetime, and be the most unhappy and sad, sorrowful that you've ever been in your life. Because what's going on inside you, the storm that's going on inside you, couldn't care less about what's going on outside of you, around you, because this is what's going on in there. This is what's going on in there, and it's quiet, and it's silent, and it's dark. I'm not any kind of expert on psychology or mental illness or anything like that. I can only speak to my own experience. So this is what this is. It's just conversations, speaking to my own experience, my opinion of things, my theory of things. Depression is insidious. It's something that takes you to a dark place. Previously, when I said that as a kid, just one day the sun went down, it was exactly like that for me. The sun went down, and then I was in a dark place. I was in a dark place. Everything was dark. Everything from that moment on was colored by my depression. It's something, if someone has never experienced depression, it's not really something you can explain to their satisfaction, because their mind just can't compute. Either can't or won't or doesn't want to. I haven't figured that out, or I don't know. But it's not really something you can explain to anyone's satisfaction if they've never experienced it or never been close to someone who has and has gone through that journey with them. It's something, like I said, that leaves you in the dark. It leaves you feeling completely hopeless and vulnerable and sad. The depth of the sadness is soul deep. Soul deep. It's so deep. You can feel it in your spirit, in your soul. The sorrow, the sense of hopelessness, helplessness that it leaves you with, that you can't do anything. You can't do anything. And it's insidious. It's insidious and malicious in a way that it whispers to you constantly. It's a constant whisper. It's right there in your ear, day in and day out, 24/7. You get no rest from it. You get no respite from it. It leaves you exhausted mentally. And then it gets to a point where you become physically exhausted from the mental exertion. You just don't want to get out of bed. There's no reason to get out of bed. It's constantly a malicious voice whispering to you. You're helpless. You're hopeless. You'll never accomplish anything. You'll never be good enough. You'll never be happy. You don't deserve to be happy. It robs you. It's a joy thief. Depression is a joy thief. It robs you of your joy. It robs you of your hope. It robs you of anything you took pleasure in, anything that ever made you happy. It wants to leave you stripped and bare with nothing and alone. You just, the sadness, I can't even explain that level of sadness. It's like you're being dragged underwater. You're dragged underwater, and you're underwater, you can't breathe, and you cannot reach the top to get out of there to breathe. You're in a cage. I used to picture myself in a cage underwater. I can't find the door to the cage to open it to get out, so I can swim up and catch my breath and see daylight. It takes you to the depth of everywhere that is dark. It takes you to a depth that just gets darker and darker. And you sit there. And just, there's no joy in anything around you. It's insidious. You just don't understand why you're here, why you were brought here. If this was going to be your life, if this was going to be your earthly experience, you don't understand. Why would God bring me here? If this was going to be my earthly experience, why would He want me to be suffering this way? You just don't understand. And that's the part that leads you to this trail where you start thinking, well, I don't want to be here. If this is it, if this is how it's going to go, I don't want to be here. I can't do this anymore. I don't want to be on this earth if this is how it's going to be. This constant sadness and this constant negative reel that just keeps playing in your head over and over again. It whispers to you like an insidious little creature. It telling you all these negative things. Telling you, validating all the negative thoughts that you have about your life and yourself, and that no one can ever love you. No one sees you. No one hears you. Yeah. It's the hopelessness. It's hard. It's hard. It's hard. And thinking back on it, back in high school, fighting depression, going through growing pains at the same time, trying to figure out who I was going to be in the world. Those two things warring each other. The voices of that depression telling you all the negative things, and on the other side, you trying to find yourself as a teenager and not understanding what's happening to you. A lot of people, I mean, now it might be different. So many things been written about mental health and depression. So many people have spoken about depression, and it's good that now we have celebrities who are admitting to having been depressed or suffering from depression, because as we know, until a celebrity or someone famous is suffering from something, with something, the world doesn't pay attention. Or until someone does something terrible, the world doesn't pay attention. So it's good now that we have all these conversations going on about mental health, because so many people are suffering in silence. And I'll tell you, there is no cookie cutter depression. My experience, I've found that many people in many different ways, their depression looks and feels different. It's not all the same. It's experienced different. It looks different to them. It feels different. And I'll say for me, it took me years. It took me a long time to figure out that my depression was somewhat situational. I guess I could say things that were happening in my life at the time, the environment I was living in at the time, had a lot to do with putting me in a depressive state. And like I said before, this is my experience, not anybody else's. Depression comes in many ways, for many reasons. You know, that's my theory. There are people who are depressed, like I said, that's situational, the situation they're in. There's, the environment they're in. And there are those who have chemical imbalances in their mind. And it comes in many ways for many different reasons. And it's not something you go looking for or, wish to ever have. It comes, and then you're in the thick of it. And now you're just not quite sure what direction to go in. Back then, we didn't really talk about it, so it's not something that you really understood. What was happening to you? What am I supposed to do about it? I'll say back in high school, the first person who ever approached me and suggested that might be what was going on with me was ironically one of the teachers in my high school, my English teacher, Sister Estelle. May she rest in peace. She was also a nun, of course. She told me that I had to go see the school psychologist. And I was like, why? What am I the school psychologist for? She's like, well, I think you might be suffering from depression. And that's the first time, honestly, in my life that I'd ever heard that word, depression. And I'm looking at her like, I'm pretty sure I don't have depression. Because, I'm a teenager and arbitrary by nature, number one. Number two, didn't really know what the word meant. So I'm thinking she's talking about something physical. Then she proceeded to explain to me what depression was. Because out of all the people around me, she noticed the subtle changes in me, which I have to tell you, I was so appreciative to her for that, because back then I covered it well, my depression. Covered it very well. I was always smiling and laughing and congenial and, with people, and no one knew, because I made an art of covering it up. So for her to see the subtle, small nuances of it in me and approach me about it, I was forever grateful to her for that, because she She put a name. She put a name to my sadness. She put a name to my sorrow. She put a name to my melancholy. And that sense of, I don't want to be here. I don't want to be here. She put a name to it for me. And that day, I found out what depression was. And she sent me to the school psychologist. But I'll tell you the honest truth, in my opinion. This is my opinion, my experience. I am a proponent of therapy. By all means, run, don't walk to a psychologist, a psychiatrist, a therapist, whomever you need to go to get help, to help you understand yourself and what is happening in your mind. Please run, don't walk, and go find that person. What I'm talking about now is my experience. I have not, until I would say this year, 2021, actually found a therapist that my energy was willing to cooperate with. If you can understand that, which I know it sounds weird, but I have this energy thing where I can feel people's energy coming at me, and I can feel the emotions and the intents in it. That's a story for another time. Anyway, teacher sent me to a school psychologist. First time I've ever heard the word depression. Psychologist is explaining to me what depression was and what we needed to do about it. I'm thinking, thank God, thank you, Jesus. There's something we can do about it. There's something we can do about it. We can fix this. And lo and behold, that therapy session didn't really work for me. It didn't really work for me. My energy and this therapist just did not mesh. It just did not mesh. I don't know. I didn't think she could really help me. I didn't think she truly understood, even though she was a psychologist and I'm sure educated and trained for psychotherapy. In my heart, I did not feel she understood. It was all very clinical and she had a lot of book knowledge, but I honestly didn't feel that she understood the words that were coming out of my mouth. What I was expressing to her, how I felt, I honestly didn't think she understood it. She was definitely sticking to her clinical knowledge and the, training, the treatments for this particular thing. She was on track. But as a person who understood what another person is saying and is going through, I was not getting that from her. And I'll tell you, if any of you guys out there are looking for a therapist or going through therapy, it is a must that you can connect with your therapist. That you can look at this person, their body language, their words, their nonverbal communication, and know that this person is understanding me. They're understanding what I'm going through. They're understanding what I'm saying. That you can feel that. For me, the therapy with that school psychologist, didn't work. It didn't work because I was not getting that vibe from her. And I've been through other therapists through the years. And I've even had those that you can low-key feel them judging you. But that's another thing, I guess. I don't know if that comes from their personality and it can't be their training. Because I believe that when you're trained from something like that, you're supposed to be, have no particular thought about it one way or the other. It's just, you're here to help somebody and not to judge them, but, people, personal, how people feel some kind of way about things. I guess that comes into play in whatever they do. And so my depression continued, even though I knew what it was now, and I knew that there's stuff you can do about it. And it continued. It continued for years. 4 years. It continued. And I'll also say something else about depression because it's something that you can definitely learn coping skills from your therapist. Learn to know when to shut off that voice and know that that voice is not your reality. You can definitely learn to do that. But as I made the example of the alcoholic before, just like alcoholics where they tell you, or addicts where they tell you that you're always an addict, I don't want to say that once a depressive, always a depressive, that once you've suffered from depression, that you will always suffer from depression. That's not what I'm saying at all, because at this point in my life, 52 years old, I can honestly say that I've finally conquered my depression, and it was a long, hard road. A long, hard road filled with pointy, spiky rocks and pebbles and shards, and I fell a bunch of times, and I went deeper into my depression many times where I didn't think that particular day that I would see the sun coming up the next day. But to give you guys out there hope, I have gotten to that place where I've conquered my depression, but I've come to believe that it's somewhat always there with you. But you get to a place where it's not so much in your face and in your head. It's more of a residual, where it's like a lingering kind of thing in the far background, kind of like an energy or some sort of a malicious spirit that's just lingers there off in the distance, just waiting for that one time when you're just really wallowing in the negative thoughts that reel itself over and over in your mind. If you give into those thoughts and you entertain those thoughts, that little spirit of depression just wiggles its way a little closer. The longer you stay with those negative thoughts, the closer that little spirit of depression, that malicious little things with the tentacles, slithers itself a little closer, which is why you need to shut down those thoughts as soon as they rise. And they do. I'm still trying to figure out what human process that is that puts that recording in there. Are we born with it? Does it develop over time? I would love to know where that recording comes from. But it's there. We all have it. Some people are better at eliminating it, ignoring it, or just knowing that it's not reality. But then there are those of us who are particularly not immune to it and have a tendency to want to give into it and want to adopt it as our reality. But it's not. It's not. And it took me decades to learn that lesson. So, like I said, it's very important to shut down those negative thoughts that pop up in our minds about ourselves and about our lives and the things we say about ourselves. We're always our own worst critic. And so I'll leave you here with this food for thought. Next time we talk, I will try to explain to you guys where God falls into this conversation, because I did say I'm a Christian and it colors everything I do. And I'll try to explain to you guys why God is the one that saved me from my depression. So I hope you guys have a great day today and be well.